Welcome back to Tort Talks. This is our first full episode of the year. Last week, we did the Tort Talk Power Rankings, but now we're back in 2026 with our first update of the year. After a slow start to 2026, things are really picking up in the Mass Tort world with a busy docket of topics and rulings. We have Joe Fantini here for the updates. What's going on for today's episode?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like you mentioned, a really busy month coming up in Mass Torts. Excited to give all the people the updates on what we're watching.
All right, let's get started with the first one. This week, we heard from the Supreme Court on the Boy Scouts bankruptcy settlement. What did the Supreme Court decide to do with the appeal from 75 survivors?
As you mentioned, Mark, we had a decision come down in the Mass Tort world from the Supreme Court. Really rare that this ever happens, so that's why it's at the top of our agenda. But as you remember, back in 2022, there was a settlement for survivors of sexual abuse from the Boy Scouts. It went through the bankruptcy process. It was approved back then in 2022. A lot of appeals and winding, but basically what happened was 75 victims, they appealed up to the Supreme Court and said they should be able to get out of the settlement and sue other organizations or individuals outside of Boy Scouts who contributed some funds potentially for the settlement. The Supreme Court ultimately said that they weren't able to do that, and because the plan had already been approved before a similar ruling on an issue came down in the Purdue opioid bankruptcy, the bankruptcy stuck. And what this means is that about $1.6 billion that's been sitting in escrow while the appeals are pending should start getting dispersed to the victims later this year.
It's fantastic news.
Yeah, it's a good decision. What we were all hoping for. This case has been pending for way too long. Finally, some of the victims get some compensation.
Absolutely. Before getting into our next topic, everyone following along, please like and subscribe so you get notifications every time we drop a new episode. We drop it on YouTube, LinkedIn every week, and then we send it out on our newsletter. Back to it. The Supreme Court's been busy. In addition to the Supreme Court weighing in on the Boy Scouts bankruptcy, we are waiting to hear from the court on the Roundup appeal. How will that play out, Joe?
Yeah, so another big issue in front of the Supreme Court in the Mass Tort world. So on the docket in the Roundup appeal, there's a note that indicated it was distributed to conference for this Friday on January 16th. So what that means is during this private conference with the justices, they'll review the writ, they'll review all of the briefs and the petition in this Roundup appeal, and ultimately come out and decide whether to grant or deny cert, which means they'll decide whether to hear the case or not. So at issue is whether or not the failure to warn claims are preempted by the EPA that said, according to Monsanto and Bayer, they didn't need to put a cancer warning on there. So how it's been playing out so far is this time next week, we'll probably have a ruling from the Supreme Court on whether or not they're going to take up this preemption issue. It's going to be a huge ruling, impact beyond just Roundup. But don't forget what Seth told us on a previous edition of Tort Talk. Even if the plaintiffs lose, the cases still go forward. Monsanto and Roundup knows that, but it will be a victory for the bad guys.
Gotcha. So if the Supreme Court decides to take it up, how long will it be before we hear from them?
We'll get a decision before the end of the term in the summer. So by the end of June 26, we'll have a decision.
Moving on, the first Mass Tort Bellwether trial is underway in the Uber Sex Assault MDL. What can we expect from this trial?
Huge trial. Like you were mentioning, it's going on in the Uber sex abuse. As you remember last year in the state court proceeding, there was a verdict where it was found that Uber was negligent in hiring the driver, but we were unable, according to the jury, to establish causation between that negligence and the plaintiff's injuries. In this case, we're out in federal court in Arizona. The case is being tried. It's probably going to last a couple weeks, and the plaintiff in this case is alleging that they were raped from this driver with Uber, who the allegations are failed to properly investigate and do background check on the driver. It's going to be a hard-fought case, and ultimately we'll get a verdict. I expect one to come down in about 2 to 3 weeks. Hopefully we can get a win here, and then that leads to some settlement discussions in this very important case.
Yeah, that docket has been growing pretty significantly over 2025. Hopefully, we'll see some settlements come down in 2026. Moving on to Paraquat, the EPA announced that it is reviewing the safety of this controversial herbicide. How will that impact this litigation and any upcoming trials?
Yeah, a lot of pressure coming down on the manufacturers of Paraquat. As you know, it's banned in many, many countries. The plaintiff's position is it's unsafe and it can cause Parkinson's disease. The EPA just came out and said it's now reassessing whether or not it's safe for use, and they're requiring that the manufacturers provide data and information proving and establishing that it's safe on these day-to-day uses. So they want more detail, more data than was previously provided. That's adding some additional pressure on the manufacturers. It was reported last year in the MDL, there was a settlement encompassing some of the cases. While that's making its way through the settlement process, in Philadelphia State Court, we have about 1,600 cases pending. That litigation's moving forward. Every case so far that's gotten up to trial, the defendants ultimately settled, and now we're working to get the first case to trial in Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. That could happen in the first quarter, but if something bad comes down from the EPA, I don't see any other option for the defendants besides settling these all out.
Another great sign, hopefully going into 2026. Like I predicted, 2026 is the year of the settlement.
That's what we're all hoping for, but we finally have a lot of pressure on the defendants. It's coming from different fronts. That's what we need in these litigations. We need the EPA. We need the Supreme Court. We need the state court. We need the MDL. We need the plaintiffs' attorneys. Just keep pushing, pushing, pushing. Eventually, that gets us to the table and get these settlements.
A lot going on, heating up here in 2026. This is our first full Tort Talks of 2026. I'm very excited to see what's happening. A lot of action going into the year.
Yeah, a lot. We'll keep everybody updated. And don't forget, come see us down at National Trial Lawyers in Miami at the end of the month. We'll be down there doing a live version of Tort Talk with Marc and John.
Make sure you come visit us. If you want to reach out to us, reach out to us. We'll be there filming nonstop Monday and Tuesday. And we think we get in Sunday night, but we'll have the whole crew down there recording. Joe, thank you again for this episode. Thank you for listening in to the most valuable 10 minutes in Mass Torts.
Thanks, Marc.